Welcome back to the Knife Life, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the Lockback folding knife. The lockback mechanism is one of the simpler mechanisms. So obviously, if we want to open the knife, we just pivot open as such, and the blade is now in the locked position. It will not move forwards until we release the lock. In order to release the lock, we have the release back here. And all I need to do is push this in, and of course the knife rotates back into the closed position. Pretty straightforward, it's pretty simple. So let's go ahead and open it up and take a look at how this actually works. So now that we have this open, you can see that it's relatively simple. There's a couple main components. You have the blade itself, you have the latch, you have the spring, and then of course you have the spacer. Make sure to take notice of this little cut here. This is what the latch here is going to engage with. So when we open the knife, you can see that pops down in there and the blade no longer wants to close. So when we try applying a downwards pressure on this blade and this tries rotating around, this piece right here is trying to rotate into this block of steel, and it just doesn't like to do that. And that's what allows us to keep the knife locked open. And in order to actually get this to disengage, by pressing down, we lift that clear of that notch and it allows us to close the blade. Now, an interesting thing that most people don't know about is that this is not a 90-degree angle right here. Now, that's very important because if this was a 90-degree angle on this cut and this was 90 degrees here on this, if I tried taking this over here about this point, instead of being able to slide down into position, what you would end up having is that the 90-degree angles wouldn't line up correctly so that everything would bind and you wouldn't get a good solid lock. So, to avoid that, typically an angle of about 8 degrees is put on this back portion of the cut here in order to allow the blade to actually engage into the lock. This picture clearly shows the 8-degree angle in both the latch and the blade, which allow for the blade to engage with the latch and not end up binding. Another interesting aspect of this design is that this locking mechanism actually helps hold the blade closed so that it doesn't accidentally open and cut you up in your own pocket. So watch this piece right here. When I try to open the blade, you'll notice that this actually pushes out as such. Now the reason for that is that I have a rather straight portion of the knife here, which this is now resting up against. And there's nothing terribly crazy about that. But note that the spring here is still applying attention to the latch arm, which is still pressing up against the blade itself. And note that we also have a bit of a sharp corner here. So when I try to rotate this blade, that sharp corner has to make its way past the latch arm. And what that ends up doing is that if I try taking it out a little ways and then letting it go, you'll notice that it just springs back into position. The resistance of getting around this little curve here is what actually holds everything closed until we're ready to actually open the knife. When we actually want to open the knife, all we have to do is apply enough force to get it past that corner there, and then it smoothly pivots around the rest of the way until it drops into the lock notch. It's also important to note that there isn't just one type of lockback mechanism. All lockback mechanisms function the same, but you can have different varieties. For example, here we have the Spyderco Delica with the release located in the center of the back of the knife. This buck knife, on the other hand, has its release mechanism towards the back of the grip. Exact same function, different location for different uses. And that's how a lockback knife works. They're pretty simple, And they're effective. They work well, and there's a reason why they're one of the most popular mechanisms available on the market today. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and keep an eye out for more videos. I'm always putting out more content. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments down below, and I'll get around to them as soon as I can. Until next time, stay safe and keep living the knife life.